Hello, guys. Welcome to my basement for the first audio commentary of Act 3. This is Scene 1, right? And we left off with a soliloquy by Hamlet, in which he was reflecting both on the actor and his in the contrast, how the actor was almost kind of a foil to him, and how he's worked himself up into so much of emotional turmoil, and the Hamlet felt like he was feeling a fraction of that, where he should feel more. And then he gets his light bulb moment about using the players in the play to hopefully expose Claudius into reacting in some way that would show that he is indeed guilty. So starting with Act 3, Scene 1, a room in the castle. Enter the king, queen, Polonius, Ophelia, Rosencrantz, and Guildenstern. In other words, all the people are talking about Hamlet behind his back and scheming against him and spying on him.
And can you, by no drift of circumstance, get from him why he puts on his confusion, grating so harshly all his days of quiet with turbulent and dangerous lunacy?
He does confess he feels himself distracted, but from what cause he will by no means speak.
Nor do we find him forward to be sounded, but with a crafty madness keeps aloof when we would bring him on to some confession of his true state.
Okay, so you can see Rosencrantz and Guildenstern have come back, and they're trying to report back on Hamlet's behavior, but they're obviously kind of confused by it because Hamlet is running mental circles around everybody, right?
Did he receive you well?
Oh, most like a gentleman.
But with much forcing of his disposition.
Niggard of question, but of our demands most free in his reply.
Did you assay him to any pastimes?
Madam, it so fell out that certain players we all wrought on the way. Of these we told him, and there did seem in him a kind of joy to hear of it. They are here about the court, and, as I think, they have already ordered this night to play before him.
It is most true, and he beseeched me to entreat your majesties to hear and see the matter.
With all my heart, and it doth much content me to hear him so inclined. Good gentleman, give him a further edge, and drive his purpose on to these delights.
Okay, so on the surface at least, Claudius seems to be happy that Hamlet is excited about seeing the players. Now we know, dramatic irony, right, that he's up to something else, but we would maybe infer that Claudius is happy that he's distracted by something else, because maybe that would reassure him that he's not trying to scheme against him and figure out what's going on. He wouldn't really have any reason to know that Hamlet knows what happened, but he is probably pretty anxious about keeping a secret, right?
Shall, my lord.
Sweet Gertrude, leave us two, for we have closely sent for Hamlet hither, that he, as 'twere by accident, may hear of Ophelia. Her father and myself, lawful espials, will so bestow ourselves that, seeing unseen, we may of their encounter frankly judge, and gather by him, as he is behaved, if be the affliction of his love, or no, that thus he suffers for.
I shall obey you. And for your part, Ophelia, I do wish that your good beauties be the happy cause of Hamlet's wildness. So shall I hope your virtues will bring him to his wonted way again, to both your honours.
Madam, I wish it may.
Okay, exit Queen.
Ophelia, walk you here. Gracious, so please you, we will bestow ourselves. Read on this book, that show of such an exercise may colour your loneliness. We are oft to blame in this. 'Tis too much proved that with devotion's visage and pious action we do sugar o'er the devil himself.
Oh, 'tis too true.
Okay, so they are sending Ophelia out as bait, right? They're going to try to eavesdrop on a conversation between the two of them. Now, the king is kind of separated, and here he talks to himself because it's an aside and not an aside to someone else. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting moment because we haven't seen the king talking to himself, which might be a little revealing, right?
True. How smart a lash that speech doth give my conscience. The harlot's cheek, beautied with plastering art, is not more ugly to the thing that helps it than is my deed to my most painted word. Oh, heavy burden.
What does he kind of sound like there that we would not expect him to sound like with the monster that we think of him. Now he's not taking anything back, but it does sound like he has at least some guilt there. Right now is expressed through a kind of extended metaphor. You might even call it an analogy, because it's talking about appearance and deed, and it's making a comparison of him to another type of person doing something. Okay, and it creates a comparison and kind of a contrast there. One is greater, or to a greater extent than the other. So kind of think about that, and we'll talk about it in class. I'll leave you to interpret it.
I hear him coming. Let's withdraw, my lord.
Okay. King Polonius, go and hide. Oh my God. Look at the next line. Wow, there it is. Those words that you've heard so many times in your life. This is where they come from. Act 3, soliloquy of Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. So it's kind of one of those lines that you hear out of context, right? So it's a linking verb. It's by itself, but we don't really have a predicate nominative after that linking verb. To be or not to be, what is the question, right? That's the question. The question is, what's the predicate nominative? It's missing there. So think hard about that as he speaks. And I'm going to try not to interrupt, because this is, of course, pure poetry and, one of the most famous speeches in any play ever. Okay, here we go. By himself, but eavesdropped on by the King of Polonius.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of disprized love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience doth make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment, with this regard, their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action.
Okay, that's kind of the end of the soliloquy there, because the next thing he says is soft, the fair Ophelia, nymph in thy orisons, be all my sins remembered. Because Ophelia is walking up, and of course, now we know they're going to be overheard in this conversation, and Ophelia knows it. So that's kind of messed up, right? Now, just as a hint, he's talking about when things are really bad, you're thinking about, and one might get to the point where one might think, I might do this one thing because I feel so bad. And then he defines what might counterintuitively or ironically hold one back from doing said deed. Fill in the blanks. And that's kind of the structure of that soliloquy there. Okay. This should be an awkward conversation. Post-breakup, right?
soft you now, the fair Ophelia.
Nymph, in thy orisons, be all my sins remembered.
Good my lord, how does your honour for this many a day?
I humbly thank you. Well?
My lord, I have remembrances of yours that I have longed long to redeliver. I pray you now receive them.
Oh, the dreaded giving back of the stuff. Breakup stuff.
No, not I. I never gave you aught.
My honoured lord, you know right well you did. And with them words of so sweet breath composed as made the things more rich. Their perfume lost, take these again. For to the noble mind rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. There, my lord.
Are you honest?
My lord?
Are you fair?
What means your lordship?
That if you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty.
Do you hear that change in tone there? It's almost like Hamlet was feeling and remembering how much he loved her, and then kind of turning, doing a 180, and kind of realizing, maybe looking around like, yeah, what's really going on here? That sucks.
Good beauty, my lord, have better commerce than with honesty.
Aye, truly, for the power of beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is to a bawd than the force of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. This was sometime a paradox, but now the time gives it proof. I did love you once.
Indeed, my lord, you made me believe so.
You should not have believed me. For virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock, but we shall relish of it. I loved you not.
I was the more deceived.
Get thee to a nunnery. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent honest, but yet I could accuse me of such things that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offences at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in imagination, to give them shape or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do, crawling between heaven and earth? We are arrant knaves, all believe, none of us go thy ways to a nunnery.
Now, a lot of people, I think, misinterpret that line, which is a famous one, get thee to a nunnery, as he wants her to go someplace where she's not going to be with anyone else out of jealousy. Well, if I can't have her, then no one else would either. I don't think that's what he's saying. Because if you read the lines, get thee to a nunnery, why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? In other words, if you marry with someone, then you're creating another human being, and all human beings are errant knaves. We're all vengeful, ambitious, horrible people, because that's how Hamlet feels about the world right now, right? He's so depressed and angry still. He just feels like it's all a bunch of garbage, right? And so, maybe somewhat sarcastically, he says to her, go to a nunnery. Don't try. Let's not try to reproduce this human race anymore. So he's getting into that real bitter sarcasm that you hear from him sometimes. Cynical, bitter sarcasm, right? Where's your father?
Where's your father?
At home, my lord.
Well, let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. Farewell.
Sweet heavens.
If thou dost marry, I'll give thee this plague for thy dowry. Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow, thou shalt not scape calumny. Get thee to a nunnery. Go, farewell. Or if thou wilt needs marry a fool, for wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. To a nunnery. Go, and quickly do. Farewell.
I must restore him.
Now, here's one of those times when you get a question like how much of this is an act, and how much of this is Hamlet losing it, and how much of him is acting upset or crazy, and how much is he really upset. It's hard to tell, right? You can tell he's vacillating between trying to keep control of himself, trying to put on a performance, and then getting really angry and upset, right? It's crazy. Hard to tell what's going on.
I've heard of your paintings too, well enough. God has given you one face and you make yourselves another. You jig, you amble, and you lisp and nickname God's creatures and make your wantonness your ignorance. Go to, I'll no warrant. It hath made me mad. say, we will have no more marriages. Those that are married already, all but one, shall live. The rest shall keep as they are. To a nunnery. Go!
And he runs off. Runs off.
What noble mind is here overthrown? The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword, the expectancy and rose of the fair state, the glass of fashion and the mould of form, the observed of all observers, quite down.
Okay, so this is genuine from Ophelia, and she's lamenting the apparent mental breakdown of someone who was, as she says, the rose of the fair state that everyone looked up to, right? He was quite a person, right? And we know he's smart and witty and stuff. The courtiers, so he's classy, he's educated. The soldiers, he's athletic, he's brave. The scholars, he's intelligent, eye, tongue, sword. He can speak articulately, sword, he can fence, everything. A true Renaissance man, like they said, right? All quite down. And maybe she's not wrong, right?
And I, of ladies most deject and wretched, that sucked the honey of his music vows, now see that noble and most sovereign reason like sweet bells jangled out of tune and harsh, that unmatched form and feature of blown youth blasted with ecstasy. Oh, woe is me, to have seen what I have seen. See what I see.
It is a really sad scene, and Ophelia is really breaking down there. But lest you forget, the king and Polonius have been listening to this whole thing. Do they even care how Ophelia feels truly, or are they just, scheming and spying, and that's all they care about? Anyway, they come out, king and Polonius enter.
Love? His affections do not that way tend. Nor what he spake, though it lacked form a little, was not like madness. There's something in his soul, o'er which his melancholy sits unbrewed. And I do doubt the hatch and the disclose will be some danger, which for to
I bet you do, Claudius.
prevent, I have in quick determination thus set it down. He shall with speed to England, for the demand of our neglected tribute.
What?
Haply the seas and countries different, with variable objects, shall expel this something settled matter in his heart, whereon his brain, still beating, puts him thus from fashion of himself. What think you on't?
It shall do well, but yet do I believe the origin and commencement of this grief sprung from neglected love. How now, Ophelia? You need not tell us what Lord Hamlet said. We heard it all. My lord, do as you please. But if you hold it fit, after the play let his queen mother all alone entreat him to show his griefs. Let her be round with him, and I'll be placed, so please you, in the ear of all their conference. If she find him not, to England send him, or confine him where your wisdom best shall think.
It shall be so. Madness in great ones must not unwatched go.
It's a great example of an inversion to create a memorable couplet at the end of the scene there. Your wisdom best shall think, says the king, or excuse me, says Polonius, and then he continues that iambic pentameter line by saying it shall be so, and then he puts the verb on the end of the next line, so that madness in great ones must not unwatched go. You have to keep an eye on someone who's really smart and is mad, right? Which again might be the case. In case you've missed it, Claudius is suggesting that Hamlet should be sent to England to collect some money that England owes him. That seems kind of random, but we were wondering how he's going to react, right? I mean, we haven't had the play within a play yet, assuming that's still going to happen soon. But so that seems like Claudius feels like he's got to do something about this. In the meantime, Polonius still insisting that it's Ophelia, right? Because that somehow gives him, feeds his ego. So he says after the play, okay, which sounds like it's still going to happen. Let's have him talk to his mom and see if she can figure out anything, before we send him off. All right, that brings us to the end of scene 1. I'm going to stop this and pick back up with scene 2.